we want to reach a fully decarbonized building stock by 2050, and if we want to do that in a socially fair way, we need to grab all the tools that we have at our disposal. The good news is, for example, in the building sector, in terms of technologies and materials, almost all of them that we need to reach this zero-emission building stock by 2050 already exist. We don't need a massive, new, big innovation to be researched and brought through. What we need is actually bringing the existing technologies and material in a more massive way to the market. Now, in terms of financing, we have public and private finance available. We would of course need more, but what is actually more important is to match the right financing to the right target audience and to match finance with the pipeline of projects. We also have policies in place, and at EU level we have the Energy Performance of Buildings Directive. Of course, it needs now to be transposed by member states at national level until May 2026, and then to be implemented on the ground. And I think for the years 2025 and 2026, this is where the focus and the priority should be: a fast, strong implementation of the EPPD at national and then on the ground. And to do that in a socially fair way, what is really important now is to work on how to bring the costs down of renovation and decarbonization so that it gets accessible and affordable to everyone in Europe. And here, what we can do and work on is how to mainstream, for example, industrialized approaches to renovation. For example, I'm thinking about off-site construction or the wider use of prefabricated panels, but also looking at new innovative financing schemes and business models to enable a wider range of the European population to benefit from building renovation and decarbonization measures. The 2024 recast brought a lot of improvements. First, we have an updated standards for construction, the zero-emission building standard, also touching upon whole life carbon considerations. We have an improvement of renovation policies for existing buildings with the minimum energy performance standards for non-residential buildings and the mandatory trajectory for the residential segment. We also have an improvement of the key planning tool for the sector, the long-term renovation strategy becoming the National Building Renovation Plan. And finally, we also have a boost to the enabling supportive framework for the renovation ecosystem with better information through reformed EPCs, the energy performance certificates. We have also better advisory services with one-stop shops and a renovation passport scheme. And finally, a better link between financial support and existing policies. So all in all, improvements. What counts now is getting the EPPD actually transposed and implemented on the ground. The EPPD text at EU level is good, but it's only as good as it gets transposed by member states and implemented on the ground to make an impact. When we speak about impact, actually, and the EU Buildings Climate Tracker, a tool from BPIE, is actually looking at the real progress on the ground in terms of building decarbonization. And it has shown that actually we are far from reaching our 2030 and 2050 targets. We're making progress in the right direction, but it's not fast enough and it's not strong enough. So the EPPD comes at the right time. It's a powerful toolbox, but the toolbox needs to be opened and it needs to be used by member states. Of course, if you have better buildings, it will help to lower the energy bills of households through, for example, reducing the energy demand, but also switching to renewables-based supply. And of course, if we switch away from fossil fuels, we will have households that are less dependent on volatile prices that come from unreliable and also expensive third-party providers outside Europe. But when we think about building renovation and decarbonization, we also have to think about how to help reduce energy poverty there and do it in a socially fair way. I think the EPPD has a strong social component. First, it recognizes officially and politically the existence of energy poverty and gives a definition for vulnerable households that really helps identifying which population to target as a priority. It also has some measures that target the worst performing buildings, and we know these are the buildings in which the lowest income, most vulnerable households live in majority. We also then have some special support that member states need to provide, whether in terms of advice or in terms of financing to those vulnerable households. And finally, member states are also required to put in place some protective measures for these households and to monitor the social impacts of building renovation and decarbonization policies. So if implemented well, the EPPD can really help to reduce energy poverty, and I would say more positively and proactively it can help ensure providing affordable housing to a lot of Europeans.